Jonathan's mission is to help project professionals and organisations around the world with ideas and skills to go beyond the technical and restrictive ways of working, to become more effective on projects and develop more successful project outcomes on a sustainable basis. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jonathan Haylock.
Thank you. Thanks, Brad. Well, thank you so much, Brad, for your kind introduction, and also appreciate the invitation to come and speak with you guys tonight. It's something that is very meaningful and important to me, and I hope that I'll be able to share some insights and some value for your evening this evening. I might be doing a bit of a juggling act with the mic and the flicker and my notes, but I will be referring to my notes occasionally because I want to wring every little last bit of value out in the short amount of time that we've got together. And you might have noticed I've got this bit of a dodgy North London accent going on here, but that takes me back to the days when I was, well, there's the missing link. It's a huge bloody industrial sized link that we've got to talk about tonight. And so I went back in the homeland, in the northeast of England, the chilly northeast of England. It's up there in, near Scotland, and it's a stone's throw away from Norway as well. So spent a couple of years up there, and this was a project to amalgamate 3 acute hospital sites from around the north of England into a single site. And so there was a live hospital in the centre there. I was looking after a group of the buildings over here and all of the parking and internal roads and the services that go along with it. So we had a fully functioning hospital there, and we needed to keep the lights on and the life-saving units operating continuously. There was a lot of interface and interaction. So high complex, high pressure environment. And I joined a joint venture, so my employer moved me up to this project here, and there was a joint venture with another national organisation, and we worked really quite effectively together over the years that I was there, and it was a successful delivery for this project. After a couple of years that I was there for, I felt that it was time for me to move on. So I've got a few arrows in my quiver that I thought that I could use in the big wide world, so off I went. But before I left, the project director of that project that you just saw there, he pulled me into his office and he said to me, we were reminiscing for a while just how well we were operating with the people and the relationships that was going on in that project, how we formed great working relationships with different people from other organisations. We had a shared vision with the client, and we operated really quite well through the hard times and through and we celebrated the wins together too. And he said to me, if there's one thing I want you to leave this project knowing, Jonathan, it's this one thing. It's people that make projects happen. It's not the methodologies, the strategies, the policies. It's not the charts or the standards or the contracts even. It's the people. And when you can get the people working well together, then project success will surely follow. And that really resonated very strongly with me in 2 ways. The first way is that was exactly what my experience was like working on that project. And second of all, it sparked a real interest that I'd had since I was a teenager into what is it that makes people tick and how we can influence people, positively influence them. So I moved into my career as a civil engineer, and over that time, I studied the project management ways and the processes, the methodologies, and I applied them in the work that I was, in the projects that I was working on. And I'd also studied and applied the technical aspects of being a civil engineer as well, and how they all amalgamated for the whole of the project life cycle and across the project organisations. And meanwhile, in the background, I was also studying what is it that makes projects successful and what is it that makes them fail. And there's a lot of reports being done, and I just wanted to make mention of the You know, the proposed industry reform reports that have been done by government organisations going back 30 years now. And what I recognised was that those proposed industry reforms, they're recognising that there's a fundamental failure going on in our industry. And this was going back to the Latham report nearly about 30 years ago. And you might have heard of the Egan report. And, but 30 years later, we are still suffering and struggling to deliver projects successfully. And as you can tell, this has become quite a frustration for me. And so, you know, and what I've found over the years is that there is emerging evidence that's coming to the forefront today that is really exposing our vulnerabilities in the industry, and it's also highlighting the frailties that we have. And they're all about being people and working better together. And for me, there was a true correlation with all of the studies that I've seen through institutions in academia, in professional institutions, more government reports and more, you know, management consulting, you know, global national consulting firms undertaking these reports, and they're all aligning with what I'm experiencing. My colleagues in the industry and my peers are all saying the same thing. There's a fundamental gap as project managers and engineers that we need to go beyond the technical and the administrative ways of working. And we need to close the gap so that we know how to work more effectively with one another. But still, again, I come back to my frustration. Nothing is happening about it. Nobody is grabbing this bull by the horns. But what I want to show to you, so that's the thousands of hours of study that I wanted to show you, that I talked about. And what I want to point to you now is the fact that I want to show you the hard truths that's going on in the industry. I'm in the engineering and construction industry, and this is what I know. These are the people that I work with and been working with for decades now. So it's people that make projects happen. But the hard truths are, and the reality is, and just please, you know, if any of you share any of these experiences that I'm about to share with you, you know, please, I'll be asking you intermittently along the way. I'd like to know who agrees with what I'm saying and who doesn't, you know. So I've heard top-down strategies and plans being pushed down to subordinates without their involvement, without any interaction into how these things are going to be rolled out. I've seen muddled information being sprayed about across a multitude of teams, waiting for people to actually grab the bull by the horns and do it. But these people are going off, often half-cocked, not really have any clear understanding of what they're supposed to be doing, but they are travelling in the direction that they feel is the right thing for them to be doing, only to be pulled back by their collar and told that they should be going in that direction. Superiors even shifting scope for teams that they're leading, or, you know, individuals. Shifting that, you know, people are left astounded, you know, with their mouths agape, not looking this way, or am I supposed to be going this way or that way? Because these leaders are telling them to do this, that and the other, without really understanding the true consequences of them changing directions like this. So people are confused, people are misaligned, and they're being manipulated as well. And what this leads to is it leads to a profound number of mistakes. There's overlap, and rework is really the killer. Rework amounts to 6 to 20% of costs wasted on projects. And this is all down to people being disorientated on projects. Does anybody else agree with any of what I've just said? Anybody?
Yeah. Not just rework, Jonathan, it's also when you go into operations, the things that they let go past the commissioning phase that they don't always necessarily agree with, but they accept. Failure to turn it into the perfect version of the operations that everyone has in mind as well. I mean, reworks happens while you're in the commissioning phase sometimes, you know?
Yes, yes.
Before then, even after then, it can be bad too.
Yeah, thanks, Brad, absolutely. Now, there's a couple more like this that I want to run past you. People being disengaged at work. Now, I've got to ask you, has anybody heard of being thrown under the bus or afraid of being thrown under the bus? Well, does anybody want to tell me what that actually means? You want to have a go?
Yeah. I guess it's Pat's in here tonight. I used to work with Pat. He always used to refer to seagull mode when your manager's in seagull mode, basically flapping around with the operationals and shitting on their people every now and again, throwing you under the bus, basically. Yeah, giving you, like, setting you up, or then being contributing towards the problem. But when they're being asked to account for it, they point to you.
Exactly. Yeah, perfect. Couldn't have said it better myself. But this is the norm. This is the reality of projects. And I've been in meetings where people are pointing the finger of blame. I mean, I'm sure we've all been in meetings like this. And these individuals are throwing their hands up in the air, you know, just saying that they're not able to, you know, do anything more about it because they're waiting for something else to happen over there. You know, they're completely, you know, out of their hands, completely out of their hands. And I've also heard, another term that I've heard is burn and churn. Now, what that is where people, individuals or teams, are literally overloaded and put intensive demands on people over a period of time, and then when it's finished, they're let to go. And I mean, is there any wonder why people can't, you know, relax, and how people are on guard for a lot of the time? There's anxiety going on. When these kind of messages are being spread and disseminated, and they do go around your projects, this is causing people to be ultra cautious, and in this state, they're not going to be productive. It's a stifling state, and this is where trust disappears. And this is where cooperation literally just evaporates. So we're shooting ourselves in the foot. The stats that go with this, right? Productivity from disengaged people is dragged down by 20%. Now, these are real statistics, and Deloitte are saying that there's 80% of employees that are disengaged. Now, is there any wonder when this sort of jargon and terminology and messages is being spread around our projects? I don't think so. And this people being disconnected. I mean, these are real, true messages that are coming from the trenches, from the front line of projects. We've got superiors that are telling subordinates within meetings that they need to apply more and more pressure on the people, on the teams that they're managing. Push and probe, and what they're doing is that they're pushing and probing individuals to the ends of their nerves. And often, for a business, they're pushing them to the end of their profit margins. Colleagues, I've seen colleagues learning local information, and they're afraid to come into and this information is bound to affect the schedule and some of the cost of this project. And they don't want to go into the office and stand out from everybody else because they're afraid of standing out for jeopardizing the momentum and the morale within the team. They don't want to be the ones to disrupt any of that. And silos is a common one. I've seen teams working in silos where there's a close correlation between the work that they're doing and, you know, a dependency, another team which feeds into their work. And they're not willing to look to see how the other person is doing or the other team is doing. They're so focused on the extents of their own scope, and they're really just limiting themselves to how their performance is going internally. They're not looking to see how it's collaborating or affecting the teams around them, and how the outcomes or the way that the project is moving forward is going. So it's very short-sighted, and This unconscious disconnection that people have to one another around them and the project itself as a vision or a longer term vision, this increases problems and it increases conflict, where people are more than happy to dig their heels in than to work across the divide. And when people are disconnected in this way, it usually amounts to claims. And claims in our industry, in the engineering and construction industry, disputed claims sums claimed amounts to 56% of the initial project cost. So that's how much, that's how much claims are being are just floating around in the ether, waiting to be settled, come to terms or come to agreements on. Now I'm going to just talk through why. I've talked through, these are real life frontline examples, right? Now, and I've talked to you about the impacts that they have on projects from this perspective. Now I want to show you the bigger picture. The bigger picture which is happening at the top end of our industry in the mega projects. And it's notoriously appalling what's happening. With Chevron, it started off at 37 billion and it went over by another $17 billion of cash. Inpex, the LNG project, started off at 20 and blew out by another $20 billion. Sydney Metro, Sydney and the Southwest, started off at 11 and just blew out by another lazy $4 billion. Now I've got so many of these, and this is the shortcut version, believe me. Melbourne's North East Link started at 6 and went over by another 9.8 billion. How can we be getting this so wrong? Well, Melbourne and Brisbane Inland Rail, that's 4.4 billion. I think that's still ongoing. And already it's over by 5.5 billion. Snowy Hydro, now there's a good one, down in good old Tassie. That started at 2, still going by the way. We don't even know if it's going to meet that revised budget. And also Clough has gone under because of this. And then where I come from, right on my doorstep, the Bunbury Outer Ring Road, only at less than 20% delivered. It went from 852 million over by 400 million now to 1.25 billion. And we still don't know, well I hope that that hemorrhaging has been stemmed and that it can be delivered to the new budget. Now I wanted to show you the mega projects because that for me is because of the sheer size and scale of it and the number of interfaces and interactions that are proportionately larger, going to be incrementally larger or exponentially larger than the rest of the industry. This is like putting a magnifying glass over our industry to see the sorts of problems that are occurring systemically through our industry. Because everything that I've said earlier about the disconnection, the disorientation and the disengaged people, that occurs in mega projects and everywhere else. Engineering and construction industry is the most wasteful industry. And like I said, the mega projects are punctuating an industry-wide systemic problem. So, I'll just to show you what the rest of the industry looks like very quickly. 50% of projects over 600 million go over budget by 50%. That's the state of our industry at the moment. And that rings true. Those statistics are true to the projects that we looked at earlier. 40% of construction projects go over by 80%. Now there's a fundamental underlying problem to all of this that we've been overlooking, like I said, for generations now. All projects at or above 20 million, now we're looking down at the smaller end of the industry, are over by 21%. That's just an average. Now, if your kids came home with a school report of that kind, wouldn't you want to be doing something about it too? But from what I can tell, nothing is being done about it. We keep sweeping all of these issues under the rug. Are we looking for the big technical procedural ways of solving these? I mean, these are not, I wouldn't say that, I don't know what you think about it, but it doesn't seem to be, an adequate return on investment for any, whether it's a private enterprise stumping up the capital for these projects, or if it's government funded money. But we are the people in our industry that are, should be taking responsibility for this, I believe. Individually. It's projects that make people, it's people that make projects happen. Because the evidence is conclusive. It's being responsible for high quality and effective communication. It's being responsible for making sure that there's a shared understanding between you and the people that you're working with. It's a responsibility for building stronger trust and openness in the relationships that you have with the people that you're working with. And together, we've got the technical competencies in abundance. We know how to follow the procedures and work to the guidelines and the methodologies. We know all about that. We're profoundly abundant in all of those. But there's something else that we're just not getting. And it's not just me saying this. There's McKinsey and Company, who are probably, in the consulting world, are second only to God. They're even saying that it's not about the standards, the systems, the processes. We need to be better at the soft issues too. And can you imagine? Well, it's not just McKinsey, but it's good old Project Management Institute as well. They're saying exactly the same thing. We're saying that the difference between, there's teams that work well, that collaborate and communicate and work through problems well together, and then there are those that don't. And the difference between them are that those who do it well, they're more likely to hit their project goals 83% of the time. Whereas the others, it's more of a 50-50 chance. Now, I know which side I'd rather be on. Can you imagine if we got this just a little bit better? Can you imagine if, our people would have more time, be more effective, and there'd be less anxiety and stress with individuals so that we can perform at our best when we turn up for work every day? Productivity in organisations would be wasting less money, doing less rework. Doesn't any of this, it's crystal clear for me. I'll leave it for you to be the judge after all of this. And reputation, organisational reputation, professional reputation for people who are project managers or engineers. At the moment, it's completely gone down the toilet. I've spoken to people, to management consultants, and when I talk to them about some of this, they're laughing at me like it's just ridiculous and it's a joke. We really need to stand up for our own professional reputation, I think. So now you might notice that you've all got one of these sheets, hopefully. This is where I'd like to turn the eyes on your own organisations and on your own self as well. So I'll talk to you through what this triangle is, because forever the optimist, even in crisis, I'm not a cynic, I just like to look at the facts to see where the problems are. There's opportunity in crisis, and we need to start by taking a good look at ourselves. So what we want at the end of the day are successful projects. We want more successful projects. And for me, there are three core elements to this, as far as working with people are concerned, and that's your team, there's your stakeholders, and then there's you. That's the golden triad. And what we're seeing in the worst case scenarios, we're seeing there's chaos in the team. There's not a lot of control going on. People are disorientated, disconnected from the projects, and so on. But what we want to be going out and why wouldn't we want to be going out of our way to do what we can to get high-performing teams that are self-sustaining. I think that's the ultimate objective for teams. And then with stakeholders, it's notorious. The problems that have been reported in the institutes, our institute's reports, they got a great suite of documents, by the way, and others, is that, the problems that we're having with many stakeholders is that they're often untenable. They just don't want to participate or cooperate as well or as effectively as we really want them to be able to. They can impact the project, and they're often isolated too, so they feel like they're not part of the project. They're somewhat detached from it. Excuse me. So we want our stakeholders to be aligned, engaged and responsive. That's a goal. That's something we need to aim for, right? And then with you, I know that many of my colleagues are stressed at work and anxious at work, under the pump, and struggling too. And it's affecting life outside of work as well. But wouldn't you want to turn up at work feeling confident, supercharged and resolute? Wouldn't you want to feel like that when you're turning up for work every day? Well, why not? It's something to aim for anyway. So the exercise that I'd like you to do is really to get another look at your organisation, look at your experiences on your project, maybe even have a look at yourself. And for each of these core elements, these core areas, I've got 3 aspects that I'll just talk through, and for each one of them, I'll begin with you, which is, to be able to achieve this confident, resolute and supercharged, these are the elements that you need, that you really want to be able to master. So the assessment is, give that a good old red, amber, green score for yourself so that you can tell where you're at in those elements. And so what red would look like for being resilient under fire. Now this is where you're in high stakes situations, and we face those all of the time. Somebody might tap you on the shoulder and really rattle your cage. And if you're feeling like this and there's that rush of blood to your head, you get that, do you?
It's like when someone throws you under the bus.
Exactly. Yes. So when you're in a high stakes situation or in a conflict with another person, and you're feeling, that rush of blood coming to your head, and you find that you're struggling and you're almost bending over backwards to take on what it is that they're saying, or even they're bending, and you find that they're bending your will to what they want. Or you could be responding in another way by digging your heels in and then ending up clashing of heads. So if you often find yourself in those situations or afraid of seeing yourself in those situations, then that's a red. You need some work to do to get it all the way up to a green. And what a green looks like is if you're in control of your emotions in those situations, you know how to step out of the situation and look down from a third perspective. You're retaining your own power in that way. And then you have the ability to control the tempo of that encounter, and therefore you're retaining your power, and you're able to control the tempo and manage the encounter to a better resolution. And you're meeting across the divide. You're able to listen to the other person and take reasonable actions. So ultimately, when you have mastered resilient under fire, you are able to convert your adversary to become the champion of your cause. Now, as a way of, a target, let's just set that up as a target. So if you've already got that and you're humming along in those areas, that's a green. You can mark yourself up as a green, or if you feel like you're somewhere in between, that's an amber. Next one, right, juggling. Okay, inject energy. So the red looks like, you're turning up for work and you're dragging your heels, you're tired already and you're feeling stressed, you're not looking forward to what the day will unfold for you. You're struggling, you're feeling snowed under, you're never going to get to the top of the pile that you're working through. And, you know, some people end up feeling quite apathetic. Two, at work. You know, have you ever seen anybody skipping into work? No? No. This is why. This is a red. You've got to be skipping your way into work. And you've got to be equal to the demand, to the challenge, chomping at the bit to get to it. And it's like having your own accelerator pedal on your energy during the day. So focus on flow is the next one. Focus and flow. What a red looks like is you're caught up with distractions and you're anxious. You know, you keep getting pinballed around the place. You're never quite able to focus on what you need to focus on. You can often get mental blocks, and you're going to be, because you're in this state, you're disorientated, making mistakes, and under pressure. The green, what the green looks like, what you're aiming for, is make way for important tasks, and you're able to optimise your time. And there's a skill and technique. I mean, I've been to many of these presentations, and I've seen people talking about how that can happen, time management, and so on. And then there's momentum and progress. You're much better at generating momentum of progress because you're able to focus on the right things and doing the right thing the first time. That is an ultimate objective, so that we're not going to be suffering rework or overlap or wasting our time and energy. So that's mastering yourself, because after all, you know, there's no way of getting around it. You're going to be involved in projects, whether you're going to be involved. And that gives you a good foundation to be able to manage the rest of it. So moving on straight into stakeholders. So what a red looks like for building trust. Now, the building trust, before I talk about what red looks like, this is the essential part to stakeholder engagement that is so often rushed or completely overlooked. There isn't enough investment being applied into this part of stakeholder engagement. For me, it's absolutely, if you're going to have a productive engagement with your stakeholders, it has to start with trust. And so the red looks like, you're confused, in conflict, and it's quite tense to begin with. And then they're bending your will to their needs and their demands. And then they're obviously going to be put out by that. So the green looks like having a shared understanding. That's putting the time and effort into it and being more at ease in the relationship. There's establish your authority early on, and then they can look to your lead. That's all part of establishing trust. And establishing your authority is about really understanding, being on the ball with what it is that you're after, where your vision is on the project, and how you want these people to engage with you. And then reconciling perspectives. I know I've got to move through these pretty quickly.
You're doing all right.
Yeah? All right. So we've got, what's this one? Reconcile perspectives. Because we all have plenty of differing interests that we have to manage, all these different stakeholders that we've got. And what we're trying not to do is fumble with each of these, so that we're having to adjust the scope to appease one stakeholder, only to find that we're going to be, stepping on the toes or making life worse for another stakeholder. And then, I don't know how many people have experienced that they've generated some relationship with a stakeholder during the course of the project, only to find that there's going to be some left field things that have come. There's some sort of hidden agenda underneath it, some surprises coming out of left field. And where we want to get to with reconciling perspectives is being the unifying voice of the project and bringing our stakeholders along with a common or shared understanding of how this project's going to be rolled out, by unpacking their interests and clarifying objectives. And then leading up and out. Now for me, leading up and out is leading up internally through your organisation, because there's going to be people that are stakeholders to the project inside your organisation in the different functions that you have to work with. That's a form of stakeholder engagement on its own. And then you've also got, well, all the way up to the client as well. And then you've also got leading out, which are the external stakeholders, the traditional stakeholders that you try to incorporate within your projects. Yeah, you know, the red looks like where there were hindrances to progress. You know, they're more likely, this is, and they're ignoring your calls. You know, they're not getting back to you when you need to. And they're really quite despondent about, you know, actually delivering when they said that they were going to get back to you, or, you know, with something that they promised that they would get back to you with. And then it's excuse after excuse, and people are dragging their heels, and they're having you know, really not helping the productivity of the project at all. And influence via, so a green looks like you want to influence via their interests, not yours. So you want to be able to understand what their interests are and leverage action and activate their participation through their own interests. Anticipate and willing participation. They're chomping, they're looking forward to the next encounter with you. And then finally, teams. Harness collective strength. This works across teams and contracts, the contract divides as well. That's always been a problem for people to get their heads around. But as far as I can understand, my experience, we can work across, you know, contract divides. It doesn't have to be adversarial kind of relationships. So the red looks like people are disorientated and guessing because they don't know what it is they're supposed to be doing. Clearly enough, we've talked about some of the disorientation examples earlier. And they're disconnected, working in silos, very short-term focused, and blinkered to, you know, what's going on in their, you know, upstream dependencies and downstream dependencies. It's all very inwardly focused, and therefore self-interested, and often go on the defensive. The green looks like, yeah, you're working with teams that have clear and accurate shared understandings with you and the people around them. Trusting, open and interactive, because only with trust, openness, does the interactive become more cooperative, and that makes up real collaboration. And they're more willing to lend a helping hand when they can see that somebody from the other team is struggling with something. And then tapping into talent, because we've got a whole project that is made up of individuals. And when you can see that there are people disengaged, just not motivated and unproductive and underperforming, well, that's where you need to focus in order to get them up to a green, so that they become keen and interested in what they're doing. Now, there are techniques to be able to do all of these, to get all of these up to green. But from my experience, it just doesn't exist in our industry. We want to have individuals that are driven because they've got skin in the game. They're not just doing it because they're waiting for what's coming, you know, the carrot that's waiting for them at the end of the month. They're laser focused. And that is going to be like releasing an explosion that you never knew, like an explosion of energy that you never knew was there before. And then finally, the success through harmony. Working through the complexities, as we do through the complexities and pressures of projects. Complaints, frustrations, blaming, under threat, ultra cautious, and when there's no trust, they can't open up and they're stifled at work. So we want to get people to feeling supported as individuals and as a group, where people are looking after one another, and again, building trusting and open relationships with between one another and with their superiors. And then having fun when they go to work every day. Just imagine that. Right, well that's that bit of overview. Now I've talked through earlier on in this talk a little bit about my interests, my passion, and where I've studied and got the information from what's happening, looking for ways why projects fail and why what makes a project successful. So I've undertaken the work to understand what they are, and I've correlated that with real world, with what's actually happening on the ground, on the front line in our industry. So project success is inextricably linked to the quality and effectiveness of our communications and our interpersonal relationships. And this cannot continue to be overlooked. It cannot continue to be relegated and as a soft skill. Surely, this is so important, and the human interpersonal dynamics that is now scientifically proven as effective. In the social sciences, in anthropology, in psychology, in all of these sciences, it's hard proven. It's got hard edges, and it is effective, and it will change the outcomes of your projects. So we can't afford to be willfully blind anymore. We must take action where action is needed. We've tried and tested the technical, the administrative, the following the methodologies and the processes, the Gantt charts, the contracts. We've done all of the work, we've tried and tested all of this, and still we are profoundly failing as an industry. So you can sense my frustration in all of this. Because I just see that no one else is really doing anything about this. So, like I mentioned about the school report of my kids, I've got 3 young boys, and I'm quite active in their education. I want to be doing something about this, what's going on in our industry. So this is why I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to share this with you, because I've taken this to become my mission now. And it's so much so that I've created what I call Project Samurai, which is the vehicle which I'm offering, as a way to help navigate our way through this, so that we can see some real tangible improvements and benefits to our industry and to our professions as well. So there's 3 levels to this. There's the graduate level who comes out of university and goes into their new organisation, their new employer organisation. And this is where these are people are our next generation that we need to get to first of all. We need these people to get this right now. We want to get there and work with the people that are already in the organisations. We've got a number of pre-recorded modules and some coaching that goes with the graduates as they go through the first 3 months of their probation period. And so we help them with the right mindsets and behaviours, and we give them the tools and techniques of the human interpersonal dynamics. And they're designed for the engineering and construction industry, because that's where I'm from. So we show them how to own their probation period, because we know that the managers in organisations, they're already up to their eyeballs with enough pressure and stress that goes on with their own work. So what we do is we help them to lead their own probation period, so that they know what they need to do first, where the most important part, where they need to spend their focus, put their focus most, and to get some good runs on the board early on, to be more effective and add value sooner. So I want the new graduates to become 10 times the engineer in 3 months that took me 3 decades to really uncover the secrets to all of this. And then there's another level, the advanced level, because there's a whole strata of people that we need to get to now that are actually operating within the industry that's delivering the sorts of outcomes that we have today. And it looks, again, it's a pre-recorded set of modules with some ongoing coaching, and it's implementable. It's designed for the industry. So it's day-to-day scenarios working across. It looks very much like this, as a matter of fact, where you've got, you want to master yourself, excuse me, and then work towards the goal of attaining a high-performing and self-sustaining teams, and aligning and engaging and responsive stakeholders. Because all of this is founded, it's got rigour to it. It really is. It's not your soft skills. This has got some real hard edges to it. And it's not just me, remember. We've had McKinsey up there saying the same thing, and we've had Project Management Institute saying the same thing. And then on projects, there's a whole collective of people. I mean, it's all very well with the previous two levels, we're talking to individuals or groups of individuals, but when you want to affect a project, organisation, even, if you're managing the whole project cycle, or, you're in the delivery phase or in the development phase or whatever it is, and you've got your organisational structure there, we help project directors and CEOs to diagnose where the shortcomings are in the projects that they're working on or their past projects, so that we're able to optimise those projects in all of these, to be able to structure and deliver, more accurate communication, higher quality communication and dissemination of information, making sure that your key players have a shared understanding with you and where you want these people to, what they're going to be doing, and the expectations of those. And then we help to deliver ways to strengthen that trust and openness between the key, between dependencies, between the key people, interpersonal dynamics that are going on in your projects. Because that is where full cooperation and real collaboration can be spawned from. It just doesn't exist without it. And then we work through the implementation phase, where we can, we don't have to just see the project hurtling towards disaster when there's hemorrhaging happening everywhere. It can be course corrected straight away. And then, if you're about to lead into a new project, then we can optimise that. That's the best case scenario from the beginning. And closing now. So that's the missing link to success. So what I've also got is I've got a book that I'm writing. The other ways that I can help people is I've got a book that I'll be publishing later on this year. I'm doing articles on LinkedIn. I'm trying to get there every week, but sometimes it's every fortnight, and I've got a website that you can get to that's still in development, but you can get a pretty good idea of what I'm up to in there. So I invite you to come along on this quest with me. I mean, it's something that's fundamental and needs resolution. And I'd love for you to have another pair of eyes on your projects, on your organisations. And if you feel like that you want to get some basic level insights into where you can get some quick wins, then I'm happy to talk through that with you. And if you're looking to explore in more detail, in more depth, where you can find some real opportunities for your projects, then again, hit me up on that. Because I believe that there is real benefit. The way that we can pull ourselves out of this quagmire that we find ourselves in is by truly working better together. And so I'll leave you with this quote. And this quote comes from a student of Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie was a steel tycoon in the Great Industrial Revolution. A hugely successful business person. And Napoleon Hill said this, and he's somebody who looked up to Andrew Carnegie to study and learn what makes an individual successful, what makes a business successful, and therefore what makes a project successful. And he said that a closed mind stumbles over the blessings of life without even recognising them. And our industry has been stumbling over itself for generations now. And I think it's about time we pulled ourselves out of this. So that we can, and by working better together, we can enjoy the blessings of working better together to see better outcomes in our own performance, and therefore the performance of the projects that we're working on. So, I welcome you. I welcome all of your questions. Any feedback, discussions really helps me to point in the right direction, so I value that very much. So for now, thank you very much.
Brilliant work, mate. Brilliant.
Cheers.
All right, questions and answers. Hands up. Any questions?
Just grab a drink.
Thank you for that, Jonathan.
Thanks.
You sort of mentioned the term soft, and I've sort of come to, in my conversations with people, there's this sort of negativeness to the word soft side of project management. Would you see what you're referring to as developing the soft side of project management, or is it more about the development of the art of working in that particular way, given that we understand the science so well now around the more technical and hard aspects of projects? And the reason for my question is, at Curtin University, we deliver a unit called Projects and People. And we're in the process of redeveloping that into organizations, projects and people, which really does focus on developing the graduate around this area prior to them moving into the actual realities of projects.
Yeah.
So I think there is at an academic level a realization that this needs to be developed much, much further, because this is a great area of failure in projects. So really the question is it the art or is it the soft side that you're referring to?
Well, I mean, whatever you want to call it. I don't like soft skills because of how it's been, it's been bandied around as something that isn't essential, especially being an engineer.
Should we all talk to that now?
But I think the point of what I'm making is that we need to move. We're technically competent, and we're competent in the methodologies and the ways of project management. And we need to move beyond that to work better, to understand and recognise that the quality and effectiveness of people working together is really what is missing. I mean, to put it in a single word, whether it's the art or whether I think that it's learnable. I don't think it's necessarily something that can be just relegated to being a personality type. It can be learned. So just as well as learning project management or learning how to design a bridge, I think that these are skills that will really add to individuals' lives, not just as a practitioner or a professional in the industry, but throughout your whole life it could really be a benefit. But you don't call it soft skills when you're outside of work, really. It's just how you are. So to label it, I'm not sure. At the moment, the position I'm in is that I don't like soft because it's relegated and dismissed. Yeah, because of that connotation. But anyway.
Well, I think the distinction here is that you can say I'm going to learn something in project management, and you can say like I'm going to get really good at scheduling, right? And to actually become proficient, you sit down in front of a computer, you press a few buttons, and you learn it, you practice it, but it's all just you and the computer. The soft skills part, you're right, you can learn it, but it's how you engage and become proficient at it, and you actually have to really start talking to people.
That's right.
Lead it.
Yeah.
And so I think we've got to be careful with the delineation here, because EQ skills you can learn them, but I mean, I could learn by reading a book how to be a fantastic presenter, and I stand up here every month and I fail. But seriously, you can, you've got to practice this stuff. So I think that's the hard part, right? Because some people don't feel confident enough to. So, and you say you've got to feel like the soft part's a negative connotation, but in the PMI world, it's all really pushing towards, there's a strong acknowledgement that you can easily learn to manage project costs, but it's actually the fine art of managing people, EQ, soft skills, communications there with the hard things. Yeah.
Can I add to that? I know so many engineers, they go on leadership courses to learn some of these. They go on a 2-day leadership course, but really, quite frank, that's just like a chocolate teapot. After a couple of weeks, they've forgotten all of that. And you're right, it needs constant application, and it also needs a peer, somebody to aspire to be, who's already in your organisation. And quite often I think that they're a rarity. I mean, they're there and you notice them when they're there, but it's rare. So this is where, you know, I've accompanied those modules that I've got with ongoing coaching, because it needs to come from somewhere. And I think that that's part of, you know, homogenising the actual implementation of learning these skills.
More questions? I'll take that. And if you guys are... Who put that in the hole? If you see the pizza man at the door, just put your hand up.
I'll be over there first. My query to you, John, first of all, I appreciate the premise and the construction that you put together and the life experience that has brought you to these conclusions and the way forward. Because I was getting pretty impressed in the first half, so I think that I can see the premise and the way forward. I'm putting it to you, being a PM, wanting to sort of cut to the chase a little bit more quickly in projects, and certainly our managers want us to. Have you found a way to do a, let me say, a people skills, soft skills health check at the start of a project, so you can pick up on what the gaps are for that particular combination of people, scope, change management, you know, that sort of thing?
Yes, yes. Well, yeah, I can answer that from here. I think it does need a way to explore where the shortcomings are, or what works. So for me, we've designed a diagnosis that involves an interrogation into how the communications are being structured, you know, documentation-wise. You know, you've got your strategies and your plans and so on, but reaching out to the individuals who have been put into those positions is one way of. You can do it through survey to begin with, asking some poignant questions to get some anonymous feedback. But then there's also a way that you can engage with individuals that you can get more out of them than just, you know, answering a few questions in a survey. And that will be able to, people will actually say to you where things have been going wrong in the past, you know, how and what things have been working. So that gives you straight away some tangible information that you can use to improve on in the future. And the more people that you can get that kind of feedback from, the better. And you're right, I mean, I hear it all the time. People complaining and frustrations, this sort of thing, are things that we need to listen to more carefully, because they can show us where we can improve. And I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure.
Eva?
Looking at this model, I have a question. Is the model meant for project managers as leaders of the projects, or meant for all project participants? Project team, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it was originally designed from a project manager's perspective. Yeah, it was originally designed from a project manager's perspective, but I think that it is applicable to any individual who is in a position of interface, or especially the key players of interface, whether they be team leaders across an organisation, or whether they be, you know, it depends on the scale of the project, but I think that there's obviously going to be more of this applicable to those projects with larger number of interfaces. But anybody who's stressed and anxious at work can benefit from the self-mastery part of it. This bit down the bottom there, because if you want to become confident, resolute, and supercharged, that will work for any individual. And the benefit of that is that if you're a project manager, for example, you know, in the context of this gathering, you're the glue that holds all of this together. And without these kind of skills, then you're not going to benefit from maximising the opportunities from those other interactions. But I think that whoever is managing a team will benefit from this core element, and whoever is interfacing with stakeholders will absolutely benefit from that.